When it comes to real estate, we have to try to put things in perspective. Clearly, the market is frozen now. There is no activity. Sales are down, but also supply is down, and therefore the price mechanism is really inconsistent with reality. I will not lose too much sleep over the numbers that we are getting now because they do not represent the market as it is. Time will change that with volume rising. So when it comes to real estate, we have to realize this market that we are witnessing now is not a real market. It's simply a very small sample of the market, because if you are in a situation in which you have to conduct a real estate transaction, that's what you're doing now. If you don't have to conduct a real estate transaction, you probably are not doing it. So if you are now in the real estate market, you have to do it. So what we are seeing is a situation in which the sample, the number of transactions is very, very low, and there are forced transactions. Therefore, the price mechanism is basically frozen, and it's not giving you really a good signal about where we are in the market. What's coming next? That's much more interesting. And of course, you cannot say anything about the real estate market without saying something about the trajectory of the recovery. And of course, what we are seeing now is a major recession with GDP growth down by 40% this quarter. Of course, the market is frozen. We will start recovering soon, but this recovery will not be a very stable recovery because we don't have the vaccine to this virus yet. So the nature of the recovery will be very different. It will not be a V-shaped recovery. We will have a situation in which after this quarter, where the economic growth will be roughly negative 40%, something that we have never seen in our lifetime, we will see a nice recovery during the summer. There is a real likelihood that we are going to see a second wave of this virus appearing in the fall. So what we are seeing now is basically a zigzag economy. The economy moving up and then slowing down when we are seeing another wave of the virus. This is something that will limit the ability of the real estate market to improve over the next few quarters, although it will be better than it is now, of course. Beyond that, after we have a vaccine to the virus, let's say in 2021, we see us recovering to some sort of recessionary conditions. The reason is that there will be some permanent damage after this episode, and we will see the unemployment rate stabilizing at about 7.5%, which is much higher than it was before the crisis. This is kind of recessionary conditions that the housing market will recover into, and that's where we see some softening in overall activity. We'll see prices actually going down a little bit in 2021, and then by the second half of next year, maybe towards the end of next year, we are going back to a normally functioning market. So that's the trajectory that we're seeing: a frozen market, some ups and downs in the near term, and then recovering into a weaker market, but a normally functioning market with some downward pressure on prices. Nothing to write home about, but something that is consistent with a mild recession in 2021 and then an improvement in 2022. The rental market is going to be relatively soft over the next year. One reason is that we are going to see reduced demand. Much more important is we are not going to see too many new immigrants arriving. If we are shutting down the economy, we are also not allowing new immigrants to arrive in the near future. Here we're talking about 350,000 people that will not be arriving over the next 6 months, in addition to another 100,000 people that are non-permanent residents. So 450,000 people reduction in demand for rental units because most of them are renters. This will have a negative impact on the rental market, which has been very, very strong until now. So we see actually vacancy rates rising, and we see rent inflation actually going down a little bit, which I believe is actually a good thing. But clearly when it comes to the rental market, that's where we are going to see the most significant impact. Within this framework, I see the slowdown in the high-rise segment of the market, the condo market, to be more significant than the low-rise. The reason is that the low-rise segment of the market already experienced a correction in 2018 and 19. The high-rise segment, the condo space, was very, very strong. We expected no less than 30,000 completions, let's say in Toronto. This was a very strong completion year, was supposed to be. Now it's actually slowing down dramatically. So I see more damage in the high-rise segment of the market. And if there's going to be pressure on prices, I see the pressure being more significant in the condo space than the low-rise segment of the market. Within the price range, the most significant downward pressure will be in more expensive units relative to less expensive units. We have a mismatch in the market now where a lot of the supply is coming at the upper end of the price scale while the demand is for lower value properties. So that mismatch will lead to some disinflation in more expensive properties.